And then he says, and let me tell you, verse 10, remember chapter 6? Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Now, most people read this and they think that Paul's talking to them. Listen, every you, Y-O-U, in this book is plural. Did you know that? The American church reads the New Testament as if it's talking to me, the individual. All the letters are written you plural. He's talking to a church, and a diverse church at that. And he says, our struggle, diverse congregation, what's the struggle? It's not to fight off Satan and all this stuff. It's to walk worthy of the calling, chapter 4. You remember that? How do you do it? Be humble, be patient, forbearing with one another in love. Why? One body, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God who's over everybody. And use your gifts, because beyond the diversity of your ethnicity and your economics, you have gifts. Use them. That's who he's talking to. He says, listen, the struggle to walk worthy of that calling to be one in the church is a struggle not against the color of people's skin or their cultural background. What do you think flesh and blood means? The struggle is against spiritual forces that seek to gut the very power and the manifestation of God's love for all people through the local church. And he's been quite good at it ever since 90 AD. If there's time in a moment, I'll tell you where segregation started. And it's been going on now for almost 2,000 years. What God is able to do exceedingly abundantly beyond whatever you ask or think is to make us one in and through the local church for the sake of the gospel. But we've allowed sin, self, and Satan to conquer us through division. And when Paul gets to the end of Ephesians 6, you remember what he says? Now pray for me. What? That boldness will be given me in declaring this message. Did you know Paul did not give his life for preaching the gospel? Paul did not give his life for preaching the gospel. If you read about it in Acts 22 and 23, when he's arrested in the temple, it's for bringing a Gentile, or supposedly a Gentile, into the temple, and he gives a speech. Remember, he stops on the steps. Can I talk to everybody for a moment? Sure. He gives a long speech. Read it in Acts 22 and 23. He explains his conversion. He explains the light of God. And the Jews are listening to this. It's all in their religion. There's a coming Messiah. There's a coming Savior. They had no problem with the possibility of a Messiah. Some said no because of religious power. We know about that. But they were open to the gospel. But it says in Acts 23, it says, and then he said to me, talking about his conversion and the light and all that, he said, get up and go, for I will send you to the Gentiles. And do you know what the very next verse is? Read it yourself in Acts 23. You know what it says? It says, and they listened to him up until this statement. And then they said, off with his head. Get rid of the man. He is not fit to live. Paul went to prison not for preaching Messiah. He went to prison for teaching and preaching the inclusion of the Gentiles in the church of the Jews, a church that reflects the kingdom of heaven on earth for the sake of the gospel. 3 pillars to define a specific, well-exegeted theology about the multi-ethnic church, envisioned by Christ, John 17, described by Luke at Antioch, and ultimately prescribed by the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians. When theologians use the word prescription, by the way, it's not optional. That means we must do it. And I'm not afraid to say that today. We preach about being bold, right? Say what you need to say. Say what the word says. I'm saying it. It's not optional. It's biblically mandated for the sake of the gospel.